Hi, I'm Joni with Looking at Careers with Joni, and I'm here today with Jess. Jess is a young farmer and a dog trainer, and I think she has a lot to offer and a lot to tell people who want to get into the animal fields. So, Jess, um, so you're a young farmer. What does that even mean?
So for me, it just means that I'm young in age. I will be 28 in July,
Uh-huh.
and young in the farming industry, as in I did not grow up being a farmer. I didn't grow up with livestock. I didn't grow up even really having a garden at home. I went to SUNY Cobleskill for animal science. I found my fiance there. We have been together. It'll be 9 years in March, and we took over his family farm in 2016. So we kind of, there's a dog. We went and we took over from his father once he passed, and we have added our own twist on things. They just raised dairy cows for his pretty much the entirety that they had the farm. So we went from just dairy cows to now we have dairy, beef, we have small ruminants, we have sheep, we have laying hens, as well as we do pasture raised poultry. So turkeys, ducks, and chickens.
Wow, that's a lot. So your biggest expense is buying things to feed all these animals?
Yes, it is a mortgage payment every for the most part. So we are in the process of switching over to holistic management practices. So rather than the traditional conventional of having them in the barn all of the time, we do a lot with trying to regenerate our soil outside. So we do rotational grazing. So we'll have the animals that rotate from one pasture to another. We have them set up to do that in a certain manner. So we follow, say, the cows with the sheep, and then the chickens will follow after that to make sure that we're kind of not depleting the soil of things and making sure that we're getting good organic matter back onto the soil to make sure that we're not leaching everything out of it. And so that's where we're kind of in the transition of doing. So a couple of things is, one, it gets our animals outside a lot more often. So it helps on our practices that we don't have to clean stalls as often. We don't have to worry about cleaning out water buckets as often because everything's outside as much as we possibly can. We live in upstate New York, so in the wintertime, that doesn't always quite go as planned. So we have winter housing for everybody. Everybody has the ability to come inside. But in the spring, summer, fall months, everybody is outside. They are eating grass. They are doing everything out there. So it lets us be a little bit more hands off, and it's really good for our soil that we have outside.
And how do you know when to sell the animals? When are they ready?
So yep. So each animal has kind of a date that you want to sell by. So for our sheep, it's a really faster turnaround than say a cow. So our sheep, we are usually processing anywhere between our lamb between 5 to 8 months old, that they will kind of, we'll have them in March and we'll process in the fall because they grow really fast, especially with being outside on nice green grass. The chickens are an even faster turnaround. So the type of meat birds that we've raised, so there's different genetics for the meat that you find in the store versus the type of chicken that's going to make like your eggs for breakfast. So the we raise Cornish crosses, so they are genetically kind of, they were picked through lots of different selection to grow really fast. So they're actually done in 8 weeks. So they are inside the barn with us because they don't have enough feathers to be outside for about 3 weeks. Once they hit that 4 week mark, they go outside and they spend the rest of their time out on pasture, eating bugs, eating grass, eating whatever. So by the time they're 8 weeks old, they are ready to go to the butcher. Our pigs are anywhere from 9 months to 11 months before they hit that nice weight. And then bovine, which is our cows, which is a lot longer. So they are anywhere from 18 to 24 months. Before they go for processing. And it's not anything that we're not reinventing the wheel or anything like that. It is just kind of how they hit that market weight. That's been one of the hardest things to get to customers, is understanding like how long things take to grow and how to plan out. So if you were to say buy a pig, yeah, you want to put down that deposit to get the pig, but it's going to be, anywhere between 6 months to 9 months before that animal's ready to go in your freezer too. So it's a lot of customers getting them to plan out a lot further in advance than they're used to just going to the grocery store to buy something.
Sure. And do you put a marking on the animals? That's how you know when they're ready?
So the chickens, we just kind of go by size and we know when we buy them. So when they come from the hatchery to when they need to go for processing. So we actually sit down at the beginning of the year, we plan out when we're going to, buy our chickens, and then we have our processing dates planned out from there. Our pigs, it's a little bit different because sometimes we have to buy piglets from other farms and sometimes we have them here. So once we have piglets on the ground, I know that they are at least 8 weeks old, then I will start to take deposits from customers and we can plan out from there. So again, we try to plan out our breedings to then have piglets and then have pigs ready for market months after that. The same thing with our cows. Our cows, we try to have calve every spring. And then that, like I said, is almost a 2-year turnaround. So we're planning 2 years in advance as far as genetics and breeding to get those animals that are that nice, healthy size to be able to feed us.
And I know you have a degree where you learned a lot about all the things that you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what about people who know that there's a need for more farmers in the world? Um, what kind of person would become a farmer without a degree, or would that work?
So somebody that has a lot of empathy and that they want to put forth a lot of time and that they really care about where their food is coming from. So no, we are not millionaires off of farming. It doesn't happen. There's a lot of late nights, there's a lot of early mornings, but the fact that I have not gone to the grocery store for meat in over 4 years. I know exactly how all of my animals have been raised. I know that they had happy, healthy lives that were fulfilling to them and one bad day. Um, that's
Oh,
kind of
that's
how it works.
nice. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I
uh,
always feel bad when I hear about these animals, but that's a
yep,
good way to look at it.
they have really great lives and one bad
Yeah.
day. So as far as getting into it without having a degree is 100% possible. There's a lot of different workshops between different extension programs that you can go to. You can pay for a lot of seminars online. YouTube is a fantastic resource as far as learning things. We look up stuff on YouTube constantly, talking to other people that could be in the field. There's lots of different Facebook groups. I would say if people want to kind of get their toes wet in the livestock market, I think everybody should have to raise chickens because they're pretty low input as far as amount of feed, amount of water. If you have a thing of 6 chickens, they are one going to help clean up your yard of ticks and bugs, and two, it gets you a little bit closer to getting closer to the food that you're actually eating versus just a garden, which a garden is great, but that animal aspect of it. And then you get a couple chickens and then you start to talk to other people that are in the industry. But a lot of it, you can read a lot of books. There's tons of books that are out there. um, Lots of resources as far as seminars. And if you start to go to, if you have a local farm store, whether it's a Tractor Supply or an Agway, there's usually things that have flyers that we have this thing going on. We just saw one yesterday when we were at the store that there's a bee workshop for honey producers. So there's things that are out there. You just have to think a little bit more outside of the box than go to the grocery store and buy your produce type of
Mhm.
thing rather than. So if you're in a really big city, drive 20 minutes outside to find a smaller grocery store or, a farmer's market or a farm stand. They're becoming a lot more popular lately, especially with what we had last year as far as food shortages.
Mhm.
So I think people are starting to care a lot more of how their food was grown and where it was grown and that it was local. Um, and so going to those big farmers markets, a lot of times farmers will come and they have produce. So rather than just buying from them once or twice, get a business card, start to create that relationship with them, just as you would anybody else that you have like service industries. You have a relationship with the person you get your hair done with, the person who cuts your lawn, if you have an electrician that comes. So you kind of build those relationships, but also building that relationship with somebody that is growing the food that you're putting on the table for your family.
Right. That's great. Sorry. Got a call coming.
Yep.
Um, there's always something that happens, isn't there?
Always something.
Do you know if you didn't want to get into animal farming and you
Mhm.
just wanted to get into produce, how much land would you need to get started?
There is tons of books that I have gotten and read that you can do a lot on a quarter acre. You can do a lot in your front yard. Um, Having a pretty clean green front yard is like the biggest mistake I think that we have made as a society. Yes, it looks beautiful, but we have more yard land than we do any other land for produce.
Mm-hmm.
So more than corn, more than soy, more than everything else, we have more yard space than anything. So people, just took that, front little spot of their yard and put a little garden in it, and they grew, everybody can grow tomatoes. There's things that are really easy to grow that get your wet. You don't need to have a 150-acre farm like we have. We have our front yard, pretty much we have raised garden beds. We have way more than most people would typically have, but we put in concrete block raised garden beds. We put a whole bunch of good organic soils into it from having the farmland for the last 100 years. We took soil from the fields that we've had mixed with fertilizer, and our plants grew better than I could have ever expected them to. And if you look at it, it's maybe a couple hundred square feet. It's not a ton. And that's for us because we're growing a lot more than just our own food, because we know that we have customers that are relying on us to feed them as well. But if you have, a 16 by 16 foot section that you can use in your yard, you can really plant a lot with as much space as you're able to have. You can put stuff inside under grow lamps. There's a lot of ways that you can be productive in a very small space. There is more books, I think, than I can count that have how to homestead on a 1/4 acre of land or how to homestead on a 5-acre piece of property. It's just making sure that you're diversifying and you're not just growing, okay, I can grow tomatoes and that's it. Yeah, you have a tomato crop, but you don't have anything else that you can kind of sustain through the winter time. So planning ahead of as far as like, what does your family eat? What can you grow in the area that you have? Because we have different hardiness zones. So there's things that I would love to grow, like bananas, but I just don't live in that type of climate.
Sure.
So making sure that you're growing things that are going to be successful and that you're actually going to want to eat. If you're not a green vegetable person like my fiance is not, he's not going to eat kale, he's not going to eat cauliflower, he's not going to eat cabbage. So why are we going to put a ton of effort into growing that? Yeah, there's other people that will eat it, but what do we eat a lot of? We eat a lot of potatoes, we eat a lot of corn, we eat a lot of beans. So that's a lot of what we grow. We also grow our produce in ways that we what's the word that I'm looking for? We grow things that grow well together, companion planting. So rather than just growing monoculture, so that we just grow one thing in one garden bed, we plant our corn with our green beans with our, I think it's squash. They all kind of grow together. It's a 3 sisters garden. So there's a lot of different ways that you can plant things together. So the idea is that the beans can climb up the corn stalks so that you have a lot more in this one little spot than you would have just planting corn or just planting beans. So making sure that our stuff is working together, making sure that we have produce that is a root vegetable, so growing down, with something that's growing up, just to kind of maximize on our space. And we have a lot more space than a lot of people do.
Great. That sounds wonderful. I think that would help a lot of people. But now let's talk about your dog training. How did you
Yeah.
get into dog training?
I, again, went to SUNY Cobblestone for animal science. I thought I wanted to be a vet. I got about a year into wanting to be a vet and realized that, oh no, this is not for me. As much as I like the science behind it, I like working with people a lot more. And the trajectory of being a vet to working with people is about 8 years. And I didn't want to put forth all of that schooling to be able to do that. And one, it's just not really where my passion ended up lying once I figured out what it was. So I transferred. I thought I was going to be a teacher. I was like, okay, I really like science. I really like learning that. And then I took an elective class to hopefully transfer, and it was Intro to Working Dogs. And it was training. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. People can do, like, I didn't ever think, I thought, people go to PetSmart for training because that's
Right.
what you did. So I got into it and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I realized there was a whole nother animal science degree that I could have that wasn't so science-based. It was a technical base. So I spent a lot more time in the barns. I spent a lot more time doing management practices. I spent a lot more time on nutrition than I would have being going to be a vet. So I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I realized that I could focus in canine, which was like, oh, wow, this is something that I have never heard of before.
Yeah.
So I switched my major for the second time and then finished out my degree. So being a bachelor's of technology, I had to do a 600-hour internship in order to graduate. I had to be in my field of study for at least 600 hours in order to get my degree. So my mentor actually certified search and rescue and police canine he did a seminar in Florida every year. And he was asking a couple of the people there if they would ever consider taking on an intern. And he found Michelle Delaney, who has Shell's Mighty Canine in Naples, Florida. And she said, yeah, I'd be willing to take on an intern. And it worked out nicely because my mom had moved down there the year before I was getting ready to go. And we met up, and it was a really nice fit. And she had everything that I was looking for as far as learning. As she had multiple disciplines. So she did just basic pet obedience. She did Schutz and sports. She did some search and rescue stuff. She did police canine stuff. So it was kind of, I could get my toes wet in a lot of different things. And she had people that worked in other areas of the dog world. So dog walking, pet sitting, grooming. So I really got to just talk to a ton of people, which was the greatest thing that I could have possibly done. Looking back, yes, I could be doing exactly what I'm doing by having not gone to college. Like there's no fancy thing that says you have to go to college to be a dog trainer. Most of the dog trainers right now that have, I've been in the field 20 years, I've been in the field 30 years, they don't have a degree in animal science. They have a regular job and they did this as a hobby. And then they got really good at that hobby and were able to make a living off of it too. So it's not something that you have to have a degree for. I could 100% be doing what I'm doing now without it, but I would not have even found that that was a thing without having the degree that I have. So
Interesting. Are some dogs harder to train than others?
absolutely. 100%. Each of
Are
us,
big dogs easier than little dogs?
I don't have any issue as far as like big versus little. I see a lot of differences between the breeds. People can say that little dogs are harder, but they're a lot easier to just kind of let get away with naughty things because you just pick them up and take them out of the situation that they're in. Versus I try to pick up my 80-pound lab and I'm like, oh, come on, buddy, let's go. So I don't see a ton between like big dog versus little dog. I think that people have the perspective of like, oh, that's a little dog. It doesn't have to, it pulls on a leash and it's 5 pounds of pulling on a leash versus a 100-pound dog pulling on a leash.
Right.
I see a lot between the different types of dogs. So herding dogs versus hound dogs versus sporting dogs versus that's a lot more what I see the differences in. As much as how a dog is raised has a decent amount of what to do with their temperament is going to be like, there's a lot of genetics that you really can't fight. So for me to get my Australian cattle dogs to not want to be behind you and to not want to nip at ankles and to not want to bite cows is not quite realistic as far as genetics for them. They were bred to bite cows.
Oh,
that's what they do. That's what they have the desire to do. So when I get people that have border collie mixes or cattle dog mixes and they're like, they keep walking behind my kids, they keep nipping at my kids, I'm like, well, genetically they want to keep everybody together. They were bred to keep sheep together and cows together. So that's what they want to do. So yes, we can train as much engagement as we can out of them, but we're not going to totally change their genetic makeup of what they were bred to do. Same thing with labs. I have Labradors. They're kleptomaniacs. They thieve things in my house constantly because they just want to have something in their mouth. My female, I figured out how to fix that. I had a very young puppy. She was 8 weeks old. I have never yelled at her for stealing anything in my house. And lab puppies are notorious for stealing and chewing. Every time she had got something from the time she was 8 weeks old at home with me, oh my goodness, that's very fun. Can I see that? Come here, bring that over to me. Versus the, oh my God, what do you have? Bring that over, because then it becomes a game. So she will steal things like gloves and spoons and ice cream boxes and shoes, whatever it could be. And she grabs it and she gives it to me. And she's happier than anything because she's like, hey, mom, look what I got. So even if it's something that she's not supposed to have, I'm like, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm going to take this and we'll trade you for something that you are supposed to have. And so you can only fight. Yeah. So as much as all of the
I have a little 15-pound dog who grabs ankles for everybody who leaves my house. So I don't think she's a herding dog. She just likes ankles. I don't know.
She doesn't want anybody to leave. She wants her little pack to stay together.
Well, that might be part of it too. So if somebody wants to be a dog trainer, what skills do you think they need to have?
As much as people say that they want to work with animals because they don't want to work with people, every dog has an owner. You have to be able to have good people skills as far as relaying information. So I can be the best dog trainer in the world. If I can't get you to also understand what I'm trying to teach your dog, it's not going to be a great match. So you have to have good people skills. You have to have good social skills, and you have to have, good skills with animals. You have to be able to kind of see what they're reading body language wise overall. And it's not something that happens overnight. It happens over working with hundreds of dogs and working with dogs and seeing different types of, temperaments that you have. So with people, it's a lot of people skills, which nobody wants to hear because everybody just wants to work with the cute, fluffy puppies.
Sure.
But one of the best things that I think that I've had is that I worked retail jobs in high school. I've worked other types of jobs. Hopefully that my low battery came up, so I hope that didn't mess anything up. Of having the ability to talk to people and relay information is kind of where I think that I have a big heads up, because I'm just rearranging a little bit because my phone decided to get weird. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So, oh goodness. Having good skills to be able to relay information that's tangible. So if I can tell you, yeah, you need to step off with this foot and move your hand in this certain way, I can tell you that all day long. But if it doesn't make sense in your head, okay, that's not going to help you and your dog. And the same thing of, I might have been able to train the dog, teach a dog how to down. Well, it works the same way for these 17 dogs. And then the 18th dog comes and the same thing doesn't work. Well, it's not the dog's fault that how I did it. So how can I do this differently to get a dog to lay down in that manner? So it's not just, hey, I'm a dog trainer, I can train dogs. It's, yeah, most dogs I can kind of do a similar thing with, but there's always going to be dogs that I have to change it up a little bit, or use a different reward, or use a different lure, or do something different because it's just not clicking for them. Just like in high school, in school, some people are good at English, some people are good at math. It is what it is.
Just like in school, often it's the parents and not the children, right?
90% of my job is fixing people. The dogs are easy. I can take the dog, I can get the dog to do what I want it to do. Getting the people to add boundaries and add rules and add things that are going to be fulfilling for this dog, that's the hard part. And teaching people to treat their dog as a dog versus as a fur baby is a really hard push too, because we all love our dogs. I love my dogs. I love my dogs dearly. There's things that my dogs would never think of doing because it's never been allowed in my house, just because how I need to run my life. I have 8 dogs of my own. I need some sort of baseline manners overall. I can't have chaos, and I bring dogs in for boarding and I bring dogs in for training. So I need my dogs to at least know, okay, this is what has to happen no matter what. So I have rules in my day-to-day life that are non-negotiable, and they're things that I don't ask my dogs. When I go outside and I open up my front door, my 3 house dogs have no plans of leaving, and my 5 outside dogs have no plans of coming in unless they're asked to be. And it's just over time and things that are just expected. Most people have the idea of expectation that they tell me, they're like, well, my dog sits and waits to eat their breakfast and dinner. Fantastic. How else can we get that they sit and have those manners then? Where else can we transition that to in the rest of your life to make you enjoy your dog a lot more than you currently are?
Oh, that makes sense. So if somebody wants to be a dog trainer, how long do you think they have to train themselves in order to have the skills to be good with the dogs and the people?
Every person's different, and every type of dog training is going to be different. So if you want to do something like guiding eyes for the blind or police dogs, that's a very specific set of skills you need to have, and a very specific type of person that you need to work with. I usually tell people, there it is. It's about, thanks, honey. It's at least 6 months of working with somebody to really get your feet wet. For me, it was, okay, I can do this. I can do this with somebody. I can, work, and I can run a class. And it was always that I had that safety net of having my mentor with me. And then when I started doing it by myself, or she was like, hey, I'm not going to be here to teach class, it was like, okay, like, can I really do this? And in the 5 years that I've had my business, I've changed it, 5 or 6 times how I run things. And every time it's a little bit better and a little bit different. At least I hope it's a little bit better. So if you really want to work in this industry, I would never recommend like, hey, I know how to make a dog sit, I'm going to be a dog trainer, and just kind of starting off from there. I would always, always, always recommend somebody who's willing to mentor you, to willing to let you follow under them, even if it's, a couple weeks with this person, a couple weeks with another person, because even though it might not pertain to all of the dogs that you're working, it's another tool in your tool belt. That there's things that I have learned 5 years ago that I had to pull out a couple weeks ago to work with a dog that I haven't used since then. But I worked with one person one time and they did it this way and it worked for that dog. Mm-hmm. So, and the more seminars that you can go to or books that you can read of different types and theories of how to train a dog, and okay, this should go this way and this is a purely positive, this we're using, shaping methods, this we're using luring, this person did search and rescue, this person did sport dogs, this person does, guiding eyes for the blind. It's all different, and it's all good tools to have in your toolbox. But the longer you can work under somebody, and even once I'm started, I have a group of other women trainers that I work with, and no, we all don't work for the same person. Nobody works under me, but we have a group and we meet and we talk. Okay, this worked for this dog. Hey, I saw this. Hey, I have this question. Have you guys ever seen a dog like this? So it's just a lot of networking that way, because as much as we've all been in the year, in this field for how long, there's things that we still haven't seen. Once you realize, as you learn more, you realize how much you also don't know. So I'm like, wow, okay, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to learn all this stuff and I'm going to know everything. And the more I know, the more I realize, oh God, I know nothing. Like, I don't know anything. So.
Yeah. And support groups are always good.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
I appreciate your time today. I think you've been real informative, and people are going to learn a lot of things they didn't know about. If somebody wants to follow you on social media or get in touch with you, where can they find you?
The dog training is All Ears Canine, spelled exactly how it sounds, ALLEARS, the letter K and the number 9. That's both on Instagram and Facebook. And then our farm page is Brimstone Creek Farm NY for both Facebook and Instagram.
Great. Great. Well, Jess, thanks for talking to me today. And again, I'm Joni with Looking at Careers with Joni, and we will be back again soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Hold on.